The morning air at John F. Kennedy International Airport buzzed with the usual chaos of travelers' families dragging suitcases, business people clutching coffee, and the low hum of announcements echoing through Terminal 4. It was September 2025. A crisp dawn that promised nothing out of the ordinary. Emma Johnson, a 38-year-old federal judge for the Second Circuit, blended into the crowd with deliberate anonymity. No robe, no briefcase, just a navy hoodie, jeans, and a paper boarding pass tucked into her pocket. She wasn't here for a case, not officially. She was here to see the system through the eyes of those it often failed her brother. Her neighbors, the countless names and case files she'd read over years on the bench. As she approached the security checkpoint, her steps slowed, her senses sharp, taking in every detail. The flicker of a TSA agent's glance, the weight of a traveler's sigh, the subtle tension in the air. She had done this before, passing through airports without the shield of her title, but today felt different. The line moved sluggishly, and Emma's eyes caught the glint of a badge on a man standing near the incident scanner. Officer Tom Bradley. Mid-30s, broad-shouldered, his posture rigid, his hand resting lightly on his holster. She didn't flinch, didn't look away, but something in her gut tightened. She knew that stance, that readiness. She'd seen it in courtrooms, in depositions. In the stories of those who never made it to her bench. Emma stepped forward, placing her backpack on the conveyor belt. The scanner beeped, a routine sound, and she walked through the metal detector. Her arms slightly raised. Clear, no alarms, no red lights. She reached for her bag, but Bradley's voice cut through the hum of the terminal. "Ma'am, step aside." His tone was sharp, clipped, the kind that didn't invite questions. Emma turned, her expression calm but questioning. "Is there a problem, officer?" she asked, her voice steady, the same voice she used to quiet a courtroom. Bradley's eyes narrowed, his hand still on his holster. "Just follow instructions. Step over here." He gestured to a small area cordoned off by a retractable belt. The crowd around them slowed, heads turning, but no one spoke. Emma nodded, complying, her movements deliberate. She stood where he directed, her hands visible, her posture relaxed but alert. "What's the issue?" she asked again, her tone neither confrontational nor submissive. Bradley didn't answer. Instead, he stepped closer, his eyes scanning her from head to toe, lingering on the hoodie, the way her hands rested near her pockets. "Keep your hands where I can see them," he said, his voice louder now, drawing the attention of a nearby TSA agent, a young woman named Lisa Carter, who was manning the scanner. Lisa, 27, had been on the job for 6 months, her eyes trained to spot irregularities, but her heart still unhardened by the grind of airport security. She watched the exchange, her fingers pausing over the scanner controls. Something wasn't right. Emma hadn't set off the detector, hadn't raised her voice, hadn't done anything but ask a question. Yet Bradley's stance was escalating, his shoulders squaring as if preparing for a threat. "I'm reaching for my boarding pass," Emma said, her voice clear, her right hand moving slowly toward her coat pocket. She pulled out the folded paper, holding it up between 2 fingers, visible to everyone. Bradley's hand twitched, and in a heartbeat, his gun was out, the barrel pointed at her chest. "Don't move," he shouted, his voice cracking with adrenaline. The terminal froze. A child's cry cut off mid-wail. A man dropped his coffee, the cup splattering on the tile. Lisa's breath caught, her hand instinctively tapping her smartwatch to start recording. Emma stood still, her eyes locked on Bradley's, the boarding pass still raised. "Officer," she said, her voice cutting through the panic like a blade. "I'm complying. I'm unarmed. This is my boarding pass." But Bradley's eyes were wild, his grip on the gun trembling. "You reached too fast," he snapped, though his words sounded hollow. Even to himself, the first shot came without warning, a deafening crack that echoed through the terminal. It missed, grazing the edge of a nearby sign, sending a shower of sparks. The second clipped Emma's sleeve, tearing the fabric of her hoodie. The third hit her left shoulder, a sharp, searing pain that sent blood trickling down her arm. Gasps erupted, followed by screams, as travelers ducked behind counters and luggage. Emma staggered but didn't fall. Blood bloomed through her sleeve. Warm and sticky, but her gaze never left Bradley. She straightened, her voice steady despite the pain. "You just shot a federal judge, Officer Bradley," she said, reading his name tag with a clarity that silenced the chaos. "I suggest you lower your weapon." Bradley blinked, his gun still raised, his face a mix of shock and defiance. The terminal was a tableau of fear, a mother shielding her toddler, a businessman crouched behind a kiosk, Lisa Carter standing rigid, her watch still recording. "I'm unarmed," Emma continued, her voice carrying the weight of a courtroom. "I followed every instruction. So tell me, officer, what did you see that made you shoot?" Bradley's mouth opened, then closed, his eyes darting as if searching for an answer that wasn't there. "She reached," he stammered. "She reached for something." Lisa Carter stepped forward, her hands shaking but her resolve firm. "That's not true," she said, her voice cutting through the murmurs. "I was watching. She didn't lunge, didn't resist. She was holding her boarding pass, just like she said." Bradley's jaw tightened. "Agent Carter, stand down." He barked, but Lisa didn't move. "I've got it on video," she said, tapping her watch again. "I recorded everything. You raised your gun before she even spoke." The crowd stirred, phones now raised, capturing the scene from every angle. A teenage girl near the gate whispered to her friend, "Is she really a judge?" Her friend nodded, already filming, her phone trembling in her hands. "Keep recording," Emma said softly to the girl, her voice calm despite the blood soaking her sleeve. Paramedics burst through the crowd, their bags clattering, their faces pale. "Ma'am, you've been shot," one said, reaching for her arm. Emma raised her good hand, stopping him. "Not yet," she said. "First, secure every body cam, every security tape, every witness statement. Asterisk, I want a clear chain of custody. Nothing lost, nothing edited." The paramedic hesitated, glancing at his partner. "Ma'am, you're bleeding out. Do it," Emma said, her tone leaving no room for argument. "Then you can treat me." Bradley lowered his gun slightly, but it wasn't holstered. His supervisor, a wiry man named Paul Evans, arrived, his radio crackling, his face flushed with confusion. "What the hell happened here?" he demanded, looking from Bradley to Emma. She was non-compliant. Bradley said quickly, his voice steadier now, rehearsed. "She reached for her pocket after I gave a clear command." Lisa shook her head. "She was holding her ticket. I saw it." The teenage girl piped up, her phone still raised. "She's a judge. I think I saw her on the news once." Emma exhaled, the pain in her shoulder pulsing now, her legs heavy from the adrenaline crash. She hadn't planned to reveal herself, not like this, but the moment demanded it. She looked at Evans, her voice low but unyielding. "My name is Emma Johnson, United States Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit. I just became evidence of what happens when fear is given a badge and no one questions it." The words landed like a gavel, silencing the crowd. Evans's face paled. Bradley's gun finally dropped to his side, but his eyes were still defiant. Searching for a way out, Emma sat against a pillar near Gate 12, a paramedic finally applying a compression bandage to her shoulder. Her breath was shallow, but her mind was racing. She asked for a phone, not hers, she'd left it behind intentionally, but one from a nearby TSA agent. She dialed a number from memory. "This is Johnson," she said, when the line connected. I need federal marshals at JFK, Terminal 4. Yes, I'm the victim. Yes, it's urgent. She hung up, her eyes catching Lisa's across the terminal. The young agent stood alone, her watch still clutched in her hand, her face a mix of fear and determination. You did the right thing, Emma called to her. Lisa's voice was barely audible. They're suspending me. They're taking my badge. Emma's eyes narrowed. Let them, she said. That video is your badge now. The crowd was growing, phones multiplying, whispers turning to shouts. A man in a suit muttered, "They shot a judge." A woman nearby snapped, "Doesn't matter who she is. He shot her for nothing." Emma's shoulder throbbed, but her focus didn't waver. She knew what came next. The system would try to rewrite the story to bury the truth in protocol and paperwork. But she wasn't just a passenger anymore. She was a witness, a judge. And the one thing the system hadn't counted on, a woman who knew how to make it answer for its sins. Before she was Emma Johnson, federal judge, she was Emma from Flatbush, Brooklyn. A girl who watched her older brother get pinned to the ground by police at 14 for riding his bike on the wrong side of the street. She remembered the sound of his protests, the way the officers laughed, the way her mother's hands shook as she begged them to let him go. That day planted a seed, not of anger, but of clarity. She didn't want to fight the system from the outside. She wanted to reshape it from within. By 22, she was at Columbia Law, top of her class, arguing constitutional law with professors twice her age. By 30, she was a public defender, fighting for kids who looked like her brother, her cousins, her neighbors. Her rise to the federal bench was swift, not because she chased power, but because her rulings were undeniable, precise, fair, rooted in a moral compass that never wavered. But even as a judge, she felt the weight of invisibility. At legal conferences, she was mistaken for staff. In restaurants, waiters overlooked her table. And in airports, no one saw the robe folded in her mind, only the hoodie on her back. So she started this experiment, moving through the world as the people she served, testing the system's blind spots. JFK was her third airport this year. She hadn't expected bullets, but she wasn't surprised by the suspicion. The terminal was a crime scene now, cordoned off with yellow tape. Federal marshals arriving in waves. Emma sat in a makeshift triage area, her shoulder bandaged, her hoodie torn and bloodied. She overheard Evans whispering to another officer. We didn't know she was a judge. She turned to him, her voice cutting through the din. Oh, you? Shouldn't need to know, she said. I was a citizen following your rules. Evans looked away, his radio crackling with orders from higher up. Lisa approached, her badge now clipped to her belt, her eyes wide. They're saying I violated protocol by recording, she whispered. Emma's gaze softened. You preserved the truth, she said. That's worth more than their protocols. She handed Lisa a card with a number scribbled on it. Call this if they push harder. You're not alone. Lisa nodded, clutching the card like a lifeline. The marshals escorted Emma to an ambulance, but she paused at the door, turning to the crowd. Keep filming, she said, to no one in particular. But the teenage girl nodded, her phone still raised. As the ambulance doors closed, Emma leaned back, her shoulders screaming, her mind already drafting the next steps. She wasn't just a victim. She was a judge, and she was about to put the system on trial. The hospital room at Mount Sinai, Brooklyn, smelled of antiseptic and quiet urgency. Its fluorescent lights casting a sterile glow over Emma Johnson's bandaged shoulder. She lay propped against a pillow, her eyes half closed. Not from exhaustion, but from focus. Replaying the moments at JFK Terminal 4. The beep of the scanner. The weight of Officer Tom Bradley's stare. The pop of gunfire that turned a routine security check into a national flashpoint. It was late afternoon, September 2025, and the world outside was already catching fire. Emma's phone, retrieved from her townhouse by a federal marshal, buzzed relentlessly on the bedside table at 7 missed calls, texts from colleagues, and encrypted messages from her court clerk. She ignored them all, her fingers instead navigating to a secure folder labeled Protocol Alpha. It was her playbook, written years ago after watching too many cases dissolve into bureaucratic fog. Step 1. Secure the evidence. Step 2. Amplify the truth. Step 3. Force the system to face itself. She wasn't just a judge recovering from a gunshot wound. She was a strategist, and the game had just begun. Across the city, in a cramped apartment in Flatbush, Lisa Carter sat on her couch, still in her TSA uniform, her badge now locked in a drawer. Her smartwatch, the one that recorded Bradley's shots, was gone, confiscated by her supervisor under the guise of internal review. But Lisa wasn't naive. She'd sent the raw 92-second clip to James Reed, a low-profile activist whose name carried weight in Brooklyn's community circles. James wasn't loud like the talking heads on cable news. He was surgical, known for leaking documents that exposed police misconduct in Chicago and Baltimore. Lisa's email to him had no subject line, just the video and a single sentence. She didn't move. Now, as her phone pinged with notifications, coworkers warning her of suspension, her mother begging her to stay quiet, Lisa stared at the ceiling, wondering if she'd just ended her career or started something bigger. James Reed sat in a dimly lit coffee shop in Bed-Stuy, his laptop open, headphones blocking out the hiss of the espresso machine. The video played on loop, each frame searing into his memory. Emma's calm posture, her hands raised, the boarding pass pinched between her fingers, and Bradley's gun flashing 3 times. By the 3rd replay, James's hands stilled on the keyboard. By the 5th, he was pulling flight manifests from JFK, cross-referencing passenger data with public records. One name stood out: E. Johnson, flagged with a federal government marker, but no further details. James didn't need more. He'd read about Emma Johnson, the Second Circuit judge who'd ruled against discriminatory policing in a landmark case 2 years prior. He leaned back, exhaling. "They shot a federal judge," he whispered, "and didn't even know it." His fingers flew across the keyboard, uploading a single frame from the video to his encrypted platform. Emma, arms out, blood on her sleeve, eyes unyielding. The caption read, "She is not a threat. She is the law." Within minutes, the post had 3,000 shares. The hashtag judge shot JFK trending across social media. Back at the hospital, Emma's Ford dripped steadily, the pain in her shoulder a dull roar she pushed to the back of her mind. A federal marshal, a young woman named Carla Diaz, stood guard outside her door, her radio crackling with updates. Emma opened her phone, ignoring the voicemails, and dialed a number she knew by heart. "Judge Hartley," she said when the line connected. "This is Emma. I need an emergency calendar under code 908B. Federal oversight hearing, immediate jurisdiction. Venue, Southern District of New York." Hartley's voice, gravelly with sleep, came through. "Emma, are you okay?" She paused, her gaze fixed on the hospital window, the Brooklyn skyline hazy in the dusk. "I'm functional," she said. "The respondent is the TSAS security framework at JFK. I'm the evidence." Hartley didn't ask questions. He knew her reputation: methodical, unshakable, a judge who didn't bend under pressure. "I'll make the call," he said. "Stay safe." Emma hung up, her mind already mapping the hearing. She wasn't fighting for herself. She was fighting for every person who'd walked through a checkpoint and been seen as a silhouette instead of a human dot. The video was everywhere now. On X, it racked up 100,000 views in an hour, shared by activists, lawyers, and ordinary people who saw their own fears in Emma's calm defiance. MSNBC ran a breaking news segment, the anchor's voice, trembling as she described a federal judge shot in broad daylight at JFK. CNN pulled up Emma's judicial record, highlighting her rulings on civil rights. Even Fox aired a cautious report, the anchor asking, "What does it mean when a judge isn't safe in an airport?" But the real storm was online, where #Judge shot JFK spawned offshoots. #Who is she? #JFK Reckoning. #Not at HRE. A retired public defender tweeted, "If that's Emma Johnson, they just shot the sharpest mind on the Second Circuit." James Reed watched the numbers climb, his phone buzzing with journalists begging for his source. He ignored them, uploading the full video to a secure server with a new post. This isn't about one officer. It's about a system that trains him to shoot first. The post hit 50,000 downloads before he closed his laptop and slipped out of the sit. Coffee shop, blending into the Brooklyn evening. At JFK, the TSA Regional Command Center was in chaos. Acting Director Michael Voss stared at the grainy footage on a monitor, his hands clenched. Bradley sat in a corner, his badge still on, but his face pale, muttering, "I thought she was reaching for something." Voss didn't respond. He knew the optics were catastrophic. A black woman, a federal judge, shot for holding a boarding pass. The phone lines were burning up DOJ officials, airport executives, even a congresswoman demanding answers. Voss's deputy, a nervous man named Greg Tate, whispered, "We can't contain this. It's already viral." Voss nodded, his jaw tight. "Then we control the narrative," he said. She questioned an order. "That's noncompliance. We frame it as a training issue, not a racial one." Tate hesitated. "She's a judge, Mike. She's not some random passenger." Voss's eyes didn't leave the screen. She wasn't a judge when he pulled the trigger. She was just a woman in a hoodie. Lisa Carter's apartment was dark now, the only light coming from her phone screen. A text from her supervisor confirmed her suspension. "Report to HR tomorrow. Bring your badge." She scrolled through X, her heart pounding as she saw the video spreading. Her name mentioned in whispers as the TSA agent who recorded it. She hadn't meant to become a whistleblower. She'd just seen something wrong and acted. But now her job was gone. Her coworkers were icing her out. And her landlord was already asking about next month's rent. She opened her email, finding a new message from an unknown sender. It was, "Emma, you're safe. The video is evidence. Stay ready." Lisa's hands shook as she typed back, "They're coming for me." Emma's reply was instant. "Let them. My witness now." Lisa exhaled, her fear mingling with a spark of resolve. She wasn't alone anymore. Emma sat up in her hospital bed, wincing as the movement tugged at her stitches. The pain was sharper now, but her focus was ironclad. She opened her laptop, pulling up a draft of her emergency motion. The hearing she'd called wasn't just about Bradley's shots. It was about the system that armed him with suspicion. She typed furiously, outlining violations of constitutional protections, citing case law from her own rulings, and demanding a federal audit of JFK's security protocols. Her clerk, a sharp young woman named Priya Anand, arrived with a stack of files: passenger complaints, internal TSA memos, training manuals. "You're moving fast," Priya said, her voice low. "Oh, this could burn bridges." Emma didn't look up good, she said. "Some bridges need to burn." Priya hesitated, then handed her a USB drive. This came from an anonymous source. Its metadata from the terminal's cameras matches Lisa's video. Emma nodded, plugging it in. The footage was raw, unedited, showing Bradley's escalation from multiple angles. She saved it too. Her secure folder, her mind already building the case. Outside, the media frenzy grew. Reporters camped at JFK, their cameras trained on the cordoned-off Terminal 4. A local activist group held a vigil. holding signs that read, "Justice for the Judge." On X, a law professor posted a thread dissecting Emma's career, calling her a judicial force who doesn't chase headlines but makes them. James Reed's latest post included a leaked TSA memo from 2023. Vague language about non-standard behavior that justified heightened scrutiny of certain passengers. The memo didn't mention race, but it didn't have to. The comments exploded. "This is why they shot her. They're trained to see us as threats." James watched the traction grow, knowing the system would fight back. He sent a direct message to Lisa, "Stay low. They'll try to discredit you." Lisa didn't reply, but she saw it, her resolve hardening as she packed a bag. Unsure where she'd go next, at TSA headquarters, Voss convened an emergency meeting with legal counsel and airport executives. The room was tense, papers scattered. Across the table, "We need to get ahead of this," Voss said, his voice clipped. "File a formal inquiry into her conduct, obstruction, noncompliance, anything that sticks." The lead counsel, a woman named Diane Kessler, frowned. "She's a federal judge, Mike. She knows the law better than we do." Voss leaned forward. "She was a passenger who questioned an officer. That's our angle." Kessler shook her head. "The video shows her complying. You can't spin that." Us's eyes narrowed. "Then we lean on the officer's perception. He felt threatened. That's protocol." Across town, Lisa received a call from a union rep warning her to stay silent or face termination. She hung up, her hands trembling, and forwarded Emma's. Number 2, a lawyer friend, just in case. Emma's hospital room was a command center now. Marshals rotating outside, Priya sorting documents, and a DOJ liaison hovering nervously. "The AG's office is watching," the liaison said. "They're worried about precedent." Emma didn't look up from her laptop. "They should be," she said. "This isn't just about me. It's about every person who's been profiled and dismissed." She sent a secure email to Judge Hartley, attaching her motion and the USB footage. "File this tonight," she wrote. "I want the hearing tomorrow." The liaison's eyes widened. "You're still recovering." Emma's gaze was steel. "I'm not recovering. I'm responding." Outside, the Brooklyn night pulsed with energy, protests forming, hashtag spreading, and a system beginning to crack under the weight of one woman's truth. The federal courthouse in Lower Manhattan stood like a monolith under the gray September sky, its marble steps gleaming faintly in the early morning light of 2025. Inside, courtroom 318 was packed to capacity, the air thick with anticipation. Reporters lined the back wall, their notepads scribbling furiously while live stream feeds on X buzzed with thousands watching in real time. Emma Johnson, federal judge of the Second Circuit, stepped through the heavy oak doors, her black judicial robe flowing like a quiet declaration of war. Her shoulder, still healing from the bullet wound sustained at JFK, ached under the fabric, but her posture betrayed no weakness. The room fell silent as she took her place at the bench, her eyes scanning the crowd knot with anger, but with a clarity that made even the most seasoned attorneys shift in their seats. This wasn't just a hearing, it was a reckoning, and Emma was its architect. The clerk's voice rang out, "Emergency oversight hearing, presided over by the Honorable Judge Emma Johnson, United States Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit." A murmur rippled through the gallery, a mix of awe and disbelief. The woman who'd bled on the terminal floor was now holding court, and the system that failed her was about to answer for it. The docket was singular, a federal review of TSA practices. At JFK International Airport, triggered by Emma's emergency motion under Section 1429B of the Federal Public Oversight Act, across the aisle sat TSA's regional director, Kenneth Voss, his tie knotted too tightly, his face a mask of controlled panic. Beside him, Airport Operations Chief Harold Rusk adjusted his glasses, avoiding Emma's gaze. Their legal team, led by Diane Kessler, clutched binders of prepared statements. Each page an attempt to reframe the shooting as a regrettable but defensible act. Emma's eyes flicked to the witness stand where Lisa Carter sat, her hands folded, her TSA uniform replaced by a simple gray blazer. Lisa's testimony, backed by her smartwatch video, was the cornerstone of this case, and Emma had ensured her protection as a federal witness. The gallery held a mix of civil rights advocates, DOJ observers, and ordinary citizens who'd read about #Judge shot JFK online. Outside, a small protest swelled. Signs reading "Justice for Emma" and "End Profiling" now swaying in the autumn breeze. Emma opened the hearing with a single document, her voice steady as she read. This court convenes to examine systemic failures in airport security protocols, specifically those enabling excessive force and discriminatory practices at JFK Terminal 4. The evidence includes video footage, internal TSA communications, and suppressed complaints spanning 5 years. She nodded to the clerk, who activated a large screen at the front of the courtroom. The now infamous video played. Emma.com and composed, holding her boarding pass. Officer Tom Bradley, gun drawn, firing 3 shots. The room inhaled sharply. As the footage ended, the silence heavier than any outburst. Voss stood, his voice measured but strained. Your Honor, with respect, this incident was an isolated response to a perceived threat within TSA training parameters. Emma's gaze pinned him. Perceived by whom? Director Voss. A woman with both hands visible, complying with every order, holding a piece of paper. Voss hesitated, his prepared script faltering. Officer Bradley followed protocol. He said. Emma leaned forward. Then your protocol is the problem. The evidence unfolded methodically. Emma introduced a stack of complaints, 17 in total, each detailing racial profiling at JFK. A Somali doctor was dinged for suspicious luggage that turned out to be medical journals. A Latino teenager was held for an hour because his backpack looked heavy. A black grandmother questioned over her braided hair, flagged as a potential hiding spot. Each case had been buried, marked as resolved without investigation. Emma's voice didn't rise, but its weight filled the room. These are not anomalies, she said. They are patterns encoded in training manuals that prioritize suspicion over evidence. She presented a leaked TSA document. Its language, vague but damning, non-compliant behavior may include excessive questioning or confident demeanor. The gallery stirred, a journalist whispering, "That's her. That's why they shot her." Emma turned to Lisa. Ms. Carter, scribe what you saw on September 4, 2025. Lisa's voice trembled at first, but grew steady. I was at the scanner, monitoring the line. Judge Johnson passed through clean. No alerts. Officer Bradley pulled her aside. No explanation. She asked why, calmly, and he escalated, shouting for her to keep her hands up. She reached for her boarding pass slowly, visibly, and he drew his gun. I started recording because I knew it wasn't right. Kessler stood, objecting. Your Honor, Ms. Carter's recording violates TSA policy. Emma's eyes narrowed. Ms. Carter's recording is evidence of a constitutional violation. Objection overruled. Lisa continued, describing Bradley's tense posture, his quick draw, and the absence of any threat. He didn't wait for her to explain. She said, he just shot. The room absorbed her words, the weight of truth settling like dust. After a storm, Kessler tried to pivot, presenting Bradley's personnel file, highlighting his clean record and rigorous training. Officer Bradley acted on instinct, trained to neutralize potential threats in high-pressure environments, she argued. Emma didn't blink. Instinct shaped by what, Ms. Kessler? Training that equates a black woman's confidence with danger. manuals that list questioning authority as a red flag. She held up another document, a training slide titled Behavioral Indicators of Risk. It listed traits like avoiding eye contact alongside maintaining excessive eye contact. The contradiction drew a gasp from the gallery. This, Emma said, is a system designed to suspect everyone and no one, leaving room for bias to fill the gaps. She entered the slide into evidence, along with emails between TSA supervisors dismissing complaints as overreactions. The room felt smaller now, the air charged with the realization that this wasn't just about one officer. It was about a machine that churned out distrust. Outside the courthouse, the protest had grown, spilling onto the sidewalk. James Reed stood among the crowd, his phone live-streaming the scene to his 50,000 followers. His latest post, a thread analyzing the TSA's training flaws, had gone viral, shared by legal scholars and activists alike. He didn't mention Emma's name, he didn't need to. The hashtag JFK Reckoning carried her story, amplified by voices who saw themselves in her bloody hoodie. A young woman in the crowd held a sign, "I'm not a threat." James zoomed in, posting it with a caption, "This is what Emma Johnson fights for." Inside, Emma called her next witness, a former TSA trainer named Marcus Tate, who'd resigned after questioning the agency's profiling guidelines. Tate, a wiry man in his 50s, spoke softly but firmly. "We were taught to flag unusual behavior, but unusual was never defined." It became a catch-all for anyone who didn't fit the officer's comfort zone. He recounted a training session where a mock scenario featured a black woman in a hoodie as the threat. The room bristled. Emma asked, "Was race ever explicitly mentioned?" Tate shook his head. It didn't have to be. The examples spoke for themselves. The hearing stretched into the afternoon, each piece of evidence a brick in Emma's case. She presented body cam footage from other JFK incidents, showing officers detaining passengers for minor infractions, wearing a headscarf, speaking in a non-English language, carrying too many electronics. She introduced a statistical analysis compiled by her clerk, Priya, showing that 68% of secondary screenings at JFK targeted non-white passengers, despite them making up only 29% of travelers. The numbers landed like a gavel, undeniable and damning. Voss stood again, his voice desperate. "Your Honor, these figures don't prove intent. Security is about risk management, not perfection." Emma's response was surgical. Risk management that disproportionately harms one group isn't management. It's discrimination with a badge. The gallery erupted in murmurs, a few clapping before the bailiff called for order. Emma's final move was a recommendation for a federal investigation. Not just of Bradley's actions, but of JFK's entire security framework. She outlined specific demands: an independent oversight board, mandatory bias training audited by external experts, and public access to all profiling complaints. "This court," she said, "finds preliminary evidence of systemic constitutional violations rooted in practices that prioritize fear over fact." She paused, her eyes sweeping the room. "I will preside over the follow-up proceedings, and I expect full compliance." Voss's face reddened, but he said nothing. Kessler whispered to her team, her confidence visibly shaken. Lisa, still on the stand, exhaled, her hands no longer trembling. Emma nodded to her, a silent acknowledgement of her courage. As the hearing adjourned, the courtroom buzzed with energy. Reporters rushed to file stories, their headlines already forming. "Judge shot at JFK puts TSA on trial." Outside, the protest had swelled to hundreds, their chants echoing up the courthouse steps. James Reed posted a final update. "Emma Johnson didn't just survive, she's rewriting the rules." The video of the hearing, leaked by an anonymous clerk, hit X, racking up millions of views. Emma stepped down from the bench, her robe heavy, but her steps light. She passed Voss and Rusk without a glance, exiting through a side door where Priya waited. "You just turned the system inside out," Priya said, her voice tinged with awe. Emma's lips curved slightly. "Not yet," she said. "This is just the opening argument." In the days that followed, the ripples became waves. Bradley's badge was revoked without fanfare, his termination letter citing gross misconduct. But Emma's ruling went further, triggering subpoenas for TSA records nationwide. The DOJ, initially hesitant, launched a formal inquiry, pressured by public outcry and Emma's airtight legal arguments. Lisa Carter was reinstated, not as a TSA agent, but as a consultant for the newly formed Independent Oversight Council on Security Conduct. A body Emma had proposed and would help lead. She visited Lisa at her apartment, handing her a formal offer letter. "You're not just a witness anymore," Emma said. "You're a voice." Lisa's eyes welled up, but she nodded, clutching the letter like a lifeline. Emma's ruling, dubbed the Johnson Standard by legal scholars, began to reshape policy. 8 airports adopted new training protocols within weeks, and civil rights groups filed motions to replicate her oversight model in other jurisdictions. She declined media interviews, letting her written opinions speak. A system that suspects without evidence is not securities oppression. The sentence was quoted in editorials, classrooms, and congressional debates. James Reed's book deal came through, his manuscript titled "The Judge Who Stood Still," already generating buzz. He dedicated it to Emma, though she never asked for the spotlight. At a small gathering of young lawyers, Emma spoke plainly. "I didn't want to be a symbol. I wanted to be a mirror, showing the system what it's become." A student asked, "Can it change?" Emma's answer was simple. "It will, because we'll make it." Months later, Emma walked through JFK again, her hair pulled back, her ID in hand. The officer at the checkpoint, a young man, glanced at her, recognition flickering. He said, "Safe travels." She nodded, stepping through the scanner. No sirens, no guns, just a quiet moment of normalcy. It wasn't victory, it was progress. And for Emma Johnson, that was enough to keep fighting.